Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another week of the VA Loan Power Half Hour. Because we're all busy, I don't want to take a lot of your time. And obviously, we were just talking about this, Justin, about so we do VA loan classes for realtors. So we're just talking about keeping attention. Once you go over a half hour, people start just losing attention because they got more stuff they got to do. But that's why we're keeping it short. All right, so today or this week, we are talking about obtaining a VA loan while you're separating from the military, and that's a wide range of time, right? You have less than 12 months left on your enlistment. You don't plan on re-enlisting, or you just recently exited the military, and that. Just last week, I had to provide a veteran or a service member with some info because they were getting turned down, and they were getting the wrong information, and so they weren't able to get approved for a loan, and that's why we're talking about it, right? Something that we just recently, both you and I, Justin, dealt with, and so separating from the military, although it does impose some additional challenges with obtaining a VA loan. It's actually just takes a little bit of digging, right? A little bit of planning as far as talking with either Justin or a good loan officer that knows the VA loan first and foremost, and putting a plan in. And that way you are able to move forward while you're exiting the military, because it is a stressful process of exiting, a life you've known for 4 years, 6 years, right? And going into the civilian world. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Separating or recently separated from the military and obtaining a VA loan. Let's see here. One thing that we do need to know, as far as, and we've run into it, is that if you have less than 12 months left on your enlistment, your ETS date on your LES is less than 12 months. Couple things have to happen. Either A, you have to write a letter of explanation that you are planning on re-enlisting, and then we obviously have to get a statement of service from your CO or your first sergeant or the admin office that you are eligible for re-enlistment. Or if you're looking to exit, that's what we're going to talk about today, setting up and creating a plan so you can purchase while you're exiting the military with that. So Justin, I'll let you take it over. And when can you use your VA loan when exiting the military, and how does all that work?
Good question. So everyone knows, you can use your VA loan while you're in the military, right? You're qualifying with your base pay and your basic housing allowance and your basic allowance for sustenance. Great. You're on active duty. Wonderful. As you kind of alluded to before, if you EAS within 12 months, you got to get those documentation to prove that you intend to re-enlist. But what if you don't intend to re-enlist? What if you're saying, that's it, I'm out, kaput, I've had enough with this, I don't feel like playing these games anymore, I want to get out, I want to get a regular civilian job. So you can still qualify to use your VA loan when you have a civilian job, okay? You can qualify off of that civilian job. However, there are circumstances you got to adhere to. Now, the VA is pretty specific about this. They have a guideline which states, anyone who just exited the service for the next 12 months after your EAS date. So if your EAS date was today, February 6th, from now, February 6th, until 2026, February 6th, you're considered a transitioning service member. So they look at you a little bit differently. And what they're going to say is you need to have 12 months of employment history in order to use that income for a VA loan. Otherwise, we can't use it. Now, I'll get into this in just a second. Say you get out and you have disability income, you can use disability income. Say you have a spouse who's working, your spouse is, I don't know, a police officer or a teacher. You can use your disability income and your spouse's income, no questions asked. But when it comes to employment, you have to fit a certain a certain window that the VA has to be an exception to that 12-month rule, okay? Because it's that 12-month rule for transitioning service members. If you were let's say you were a grunt and you got out and now you are the, I don't know, you're a janitor at a local school, they're probably going to say you have to hold up those that 12-month commitment. You got to wait until you have 12 months of employment. But if you are in an MOS and you are transitioning out to a job field which pertains to your MOS field, we can use that income right away.
I was in the engineering squadron on the horizontal construction side. So if I got out and I went and worked for a civil construction company, right?
Mhm.
It's a similar job. That's what I did in the military for 4 years, and that's my civilian job. And just an example. So right there.
So perfect example, right? So one of my MOSs was heavy equipment operator, engineers. If I got out and I'm going to be operating payloaders for, Silicon Construction Corporation, great, perfect. I can use that income. But if I get out and I'm going to be a contractor, maybe I can't. Now there is one great program that, Nick, you're going to tie into it in a little bit, called Skill Bridge. That is also an exception to this rule, where you don't have to have, you can have experience in your MOS field to transition over, or also not have experience in your MOS field to transition over.
Right.
But it's one of those key takeaways where we get, veterans all the time just getting out, hey, I want to use my VA home loan now. And then we run into that hurdle. So I alluded to Skill Bridge. Nick, do you want to tell me what Skill Bridge is and how that factors in?
Before I go on that, Justin, let's talk about individuals that have offer letters, right?
So we
have annual salaries, or we have letters of employment. That, hey, you're going to be a full-time employee. This is your hourly rate, or this is your salary pay based on the hourly rate. You're going to be 40 hours a week. So on and so forth. Are those some of the talk about some of those documents that we can use to actually use that employment sooner than the 12 months period?
So great. So I have a client. He just bought a house in North Carolina. Okay. He got out of the military. He was I forget what his exact MOS was. But he was basically like, he was an aeronautics or like avionics mechanic. He worked on aircraft equipment. I was a ground guy. I don't know much about, air wing side. Maybe you could touch on it a little bit more, but basically he was an aircraft mechanic. He got out, and now his job is as a wind turbine mechanic. Okay. So those big wind turbines that you see in the middle of the ocean or the middle of the plains, he's working on those. So he's still a mechanic, but he's working on something completely different. Now, the good thing with him is that he had an offer letter from whatever company it was called. I don't know, something Wind Systems or something. He had an offer letter which says, this is a permanent position for $80,000 a year that you'll be making, and you'll be working here starting on this date. So we were able to qualify him because he had that offer letter, despite the fact that he had only gotten out about 6 months before. He had gotten out in the summer. This was in the winter, and we just closed him like 2 or 3 weeks ago, basically. But he had that offer letter, and he was also working there, getting pay stubs. So we were able to prove a little bit of that employment history, rather than him going from one field to the next. Like he gets out of the service, and then he just starts a job, and now he's got a pay stub from random company.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that was me. Yeah, and that's why I wouldn't touch on it, because that's the one key point. That was the individual that I talked to, is that, he'd already transitioned out, and they're kind of like, well, you need to wait 12 months. And I'm like, well, not really. You don't, right? Do you have an offer letter, right? Do you have a letter of employment, right? It was going to state that you're a full-time employee, what your salary is going to be, and all that. So although that is the kind of the set standard for the VA, but there's a lot of nuances. Just the VA is very versatile, right? Their number one goal is to get veterans or active duty service members into houses. So they are very flexible. They give us, a pretty big sandbox to play in. And so as long as we're offered to provide, what I call, and what we call in our industry, compensating factors, there's a lot of things that we can do. So, offer letters, employment letters, all of that, those are things that we can use really immediately or within 30 days. So then we can kind of move forward from that. So,
yeah. And I liked what you said about the VA, because we have that little Easter egg where we're going to throw in what the VA says verbatim.
yeah.
I don't know if we'll throw it in now or throw it in later on, but that's the VA's mission. Help us out.
Yeah, we could do that. So, okay, so let's talk about Skill Bridge. So one of the things, it's a DOD thing. It's not the military, Air Force, Marine, Army, Navy, Coast Guard. It's a DOD, right? Which is the military in itself. But what's actually really cool about the Skill Bridge, and I actually personally and as a loan officer haven't had experience with it. It's either they're in the military, they've been out, and they're a veteran, right? One of the two. But the Skill Bridge program is really good because what it does, because we have additional challenges with using your VA loan upon separating, right? The DOD does allow for you to utilize the Skill Bridge program. And really what it is that it's the last year, 180 days of your active service, you can actually intern with a civilian employer, right? And so, it could be, let's just say you're an engine mechanic or you're some type of aeronautical, whatever it is, and you want to do a Skill Bridge with Boeing, okay? You can actually do a Skill Bridge with Boeing as an internship. You're still receiving your active duty pay, whatever your pay rate is, but you're working with Boeing as a civilian, and really you're going to continue to work with them for the last 180 or up to, I think it's a year of your enlistment. And at that time, if obviously you've done a good job and they think that you're worth making an offer for employment, then they can make an offer at the date that you're exiting the military. They could make an offer to you for employment, and then we can actually use that offer letter to use as income. So there's really not going to be that 12-month window of kind of, okay, can we use my income or not, right? It really cuts into and allows you to have that experience or get that experience with a new employer, and then that way we use that employment really out the gate as far as when separating and purchasing with that. My one question, I don't know this, Justin, is could you go into a different career field?
With Skill Bridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll give an example. So it's kind of a perfect example because it's perfect timing. I had a guy, I'm going to call him Major Tom, okay? You'll find out why in a second. So guy I served with, he ended up becoming an officer. He called me, I think it was 3 days ago is when I had the conversation with him. He was an officer doing air surface warfare, okay? Whatever that means, air surface, missiles, tech center, whatever. That was his gig, he was in charge of that. He did Skill Bridge, and he did Skill Bridge for 3 months working at NASA, hence why I'm calling him Major Tom, ground control to Major Tom. So he's working at NASA as kind of like in a mission control aspect. I don't know what he does. I don't know anything else other than that. It was a pretty short conversation. But mission control, a little bit different than air surface warfare. They could kind of tie in together, but not really. It's not exactly his MOS field that he's doing now. But so long as his job offer is a permanent position, we're going to be able to use it because of the fact that he has Skill Bridge, because Skill Bridge is exactly that. It's kind of like a bridge between the armed forces and civilian employment. It's a great program. Absolutely love Skill Bridge for all veterans and service members to be out there. I mean, what a tremendous program, but also it allows them to kind of bridge that gap to prove that he has employability, because this is an actual, government sponsored program that took this military person and kind of, eased that transition. The entire purpose of the 12-month requirement is to ease the transition and eliminate what we have when we get out, which is a lot of uncertainty. So by Skill Bridge taking care of that, it makes it a lot easier for us to give that person an approval.
Yeah.
I told him to pop onto the live. I don't know if he's going to or not, but he'll know exactly who he is by me just mentioning that for NASA. But the big thing with him, and I didn't realize it until I said it out loud right before this conversation, is I told him, hey, you're good. The other thing I didn't check, however, is his position probationary / temporary, or is it permanent? Because if it's probationary, we got to wait until it's permanent, basically. But as long as he has a permanent position, because he did Skill Bridge for 3 months, he didn't do 6 months, he did 3 months prior to, he'll be in the clear. He'll be all good on that end.
And I think this, and kind of with that, and that's the thing, we always say it is that, just because a company does VA loans doesn't mean that they know VA loans, whether they have the word veteran in it or not, right? There's a lot of instances where, we always say, hey, don't let your VA loans get denied. Don't let veterans and service members not get pre-qualified. Always give them a second look, right? Reason being is that if somebody talked to Major Tom, right, they'd be like, well, you got to wait 12 months. Like in my case, right, that service member said, hey, you got to wait 12 months. I'm like, well, no, like, what's your job, right? Do you have an offer letter, permanent position, annual salary? Tell me a little bit more about it, right? So there's a lot of things that the VA wants. And if you give it to them, they'll be like, yeah, we're good. We can do it, right? Again, it's the underwriter's discretion at whatever company you're using, but most good companies, most good lenders utilizing a good investor or wholesale investor, they know the guidelines. They're going to make the determination. If you provide that compensating factor or the supporting documentation, they're going to say, yep, let's do it. We're good to go.
Yeah.
So with that, no, that's good. Okay, so we have this. Next up is going to be, we kind of already talked about active duty buying before ETS. We talked about utilizing your disability pay. One big thing is that the hard part about disability pay and using that is you have to have a rating, right? You can't just say, hey, I submitted my paperwork. This is what I think my rating is going to be, right? But if they haven't issued a rating, we're not going to be able to utilize your disability income. The catch is you can't actually submit your documentation, or you can't be rated until you actually leave the military, because you can't be in the military with a service-connected disability, right?
Yeah.
So there's always going to be a gap of that. So just keep that in mind, is that if you think you're going to have a service-connected disability, file for it as soon as day one, as soon as you get out of the military, but it is going to take some time to get that rating. And we can't use the disability income until there's actually a rating on your certificate of eligibility with that. So with that, okay, cool.
Just to piggyback off that, right? God, we love to say piggyback off of things. Same goes for, retirement pay as well. That's a big one too, is there's a lot of members out there who are retiring. Maybe someone's on terminal right now. They know they're going to retire, 2 months from now. We need to be able to see exactly what you're going to get for your retirement. We need to have that actual paperwork to show that, like, yes, this income will, be good to go. I mean, we could sit there, we could calculate it out by hand, know exactly what it's going to be, and know that this person is going to retire on said date. But if we don't actually have the physical documentation showing, yes, this person is going to retire and they will receive, $4,000 a month or whatever number it is per month, we can't use that income. So a lot of times for the retiring service members, it's a little bit easier to provide both disability pay and the retirement income at the same time. And that is a major thing for anyone who's getting out, is to make sure that if you got pre-approved with a lender, they didn't get that and you didn't give them that paperwork, you're not actually pre-approved. You don't have a bona fide pre-approval, because you need to be able to prove the retirement pay just as well as you need to be able to prove the disability pay.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the biggest thing I'm thinking in my head here is that, you wouldn't go to war without a mission plan, right? We never did anything, whether it's peacetime or wartime. We always had a briefing, be like, this is our mission plan, right? You never go into a shit show unless you have a plan, right?
Yeah.
And so the best thing that you can do if you are exiting or thinking about exiting is create that plan, right? Get in touch with, either Justin or myself or somebody who knows the VA loan sooner than later, so that we can really start vetting out all of these, right? Would you benefit from doing Skill Bridge, right? Do we need to get it done, right? How is your offer letter structured or whatever it is, right? What does that look like? Do you have retirement pay? Are you filing for disability, right? What are the things that need to be done? What documentations do we need so we can easily secure your VA financing at separation or shortly after separation, and in that way we're making a plan to execute on without the least amount of frustration, the least amount of back and forth with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I have another one here. We're talking about credit and debt to income considerations. This is something that you brought up, Justin. So I'll let you kind of touch on this since we have about 9 minutes or so left. So I'll let you touch on the debt to income and all of that, and kind of some of the things that you should be looking at before you exit.
Yeah, definitely. So big things about credit and income, right? We use something called debt to income ratios, where we basically take your income and we factor it against the proposed housing payment you're going to have. So let's just call it $3,000 if that's going to be your proposed mortgage payment on whatever price range homes you're looking for. And we're also going to factor it against whatever your minimum payment liabilities are. Okay, not what you pay per month. So if you have a credit card, and you owe $5,000 on it, but you pay $500 a month, well, it doesn't matter what you pay. It matters what the minimum is. So if that minimum is $200 a month, that's what we factor against you. So not saying to absolutely do this. Like if you're going to get a pre-approval within the next 30 days, don't all of a sudden say, okay, I'm going to pay off all of my stuff right now, because you might deplete your assets, which you need for closing costs or a down payment if you wanted to make one. But if you're planning on buying within the next year, some of the best practices that you want to take advantage of is making sure that you take care of a lot of your debts. Okay. Now, always start with credit cards. Credit cards are usually going to have the highest interest rates. They're going to hit you the hardest. And therefore, they're going to have the highest minimum payments being factored against you. Okay. So you want to make sure that you're keeping those balances, as low as possible, or at least to a point where if we needed to, quick, fast, and in a hurry, we could just pay off that card and you would be good to go. If you take on new debts, or you're considering, if you're in a position where you're thinking about buying a house and or buying a vehicle, 1000% speak with a lender first, because speaking with that lender might be revealing to you as to whether or not you should be buying a car, or how much you should be putting down, if any, when you do decide to purchase a car. Because remember, once you get that car payment or any type of personal loan, student loan, auto loan, whatever the balance is, whether it's $50,000 or $10,000, it's always going to have a minimum payment. Okay. It doesn't matter to us how much you owe. It matters to us how much you have to pay per month. So if you decide, oh, well, you know what? I took out a 12-month or a 24-month loan for my vehicle because I want to pay it off sooner because I want to buy a house. You're actually kind of doing yourself a disservice, because now your payment is much higher than it would be on a 60-month term or a 72-month term. You think you're doing the right thing, when in actuality you're hurting yourself more, because now you have an $800 payment versus a $400 payment.
I think the biggest thing is what I tell my clients or anybody that's calling is, when you said it, paying off all your debt, right? Now you just depleted all your assets. What is the gain? What is your ROI with doing that? And so if you are looking to purchase a house in the next 6 to 12 months, right? It's really important. I mean, reach out to anybody, have them do a pre-qualification, and have them run some numbers. But what I always tell everybody, like, don't pay off your credit cards until you talk to somebody about getting pre-qualified. Reason being is, and I've seen this several times, people have used $10,000 to $20,000 to pay off all of their debt. Okay, because they wanted to be debt-free and they wanted to get their credit to increase, right? Well, I think they got like a 5-point jump in their credit score, and they just used almost $20,000 of their assets. Now they need seller credit. They're short closed the funds to close, all of that, right? They could have qualified with all of that debt, right? So there really wasn't much benefit to them for using that. I get it. Everybody wants to have the best foot forward, which is 100% what you want to do, but have a conversation with somebody, create a plan, right? If you do have too much debt and you have to pay off some debt, you can, say, okay, we're going to pay off these two debts, right, to help you qualify, but it's going to help you retain your cash, and you're going to be using it as wisely as possible. So with that,
Yeah.
So
I've got. You're going to touch on the VA guideline, right? Because I have one more story. If you don't got anything, just to tie everything together.
Yeah, I mean, really the big thing, like I think what Justin wants to talk on, and you can find it, it's the lender's handbook or whatever. But the biggest thing is that the VA's number one mission, number one goal, and we said it before, is to get veterans and service members into a home, right? And they are expected to use good judgment. They're flexible with applying the underwriting guidelines, and the VA handbook is just the baseline that lenders follow, right? Some lenders may have additional conditions or requirements in addition to the VA lender's handbook, but really at the end of the day, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that doesn't have those additional requirements, because the VA is very flexible. It gives us, like I said before, a very large sandbox to play in. And as long as we're providing documentation and we're explaining situations, the VA is very, very flexible. And you're going to be able to get a lot of things done, much more than any other loan product out there with that. So
100%.
Yeah.
And I'll just test to that. So he's speaking specifically like using the diction from the actual VA lender's handbook, And one thing I'll leave off with is I had a Marine who was sent into battle with a rifle which did not have a firing pin. He had his ammo, he had his rifle, he was good to go, but he did not have his firing pin. Okay. He was pre-approved by one of the big box lenders that you always hear about, that always has our best interests at heart, but he shouldn't have been pre-approved. He was a transitioning service member. Okay. He had become a cop. He was only a cop for about 2 months, but his MOS, he was basically a pogue. I don't remember what his exact MOS was, but it wasn't combat arms specific related. It was something, like along the lines of like admin or something like that. I had to work so hard to get this guy an actual approval that we had to go back. And the only way we were able to do it is by, and this is kind of funny, but proving that he had done Firewatch when he was in boot camp and MOS school. So his Firewatch was half of the employment history that he needed for this, the law enforcement gig. And the other half was also he had a couple college classes he took while he was in service on criminal justice. So he was able to use the college courses that he took from, Phoenix, whatever university, and the fact that he was on Firewatch to be able to prove that his law enforcement was good. But he had basically been under contract, pre-approved with another lender who denied him, came to us, and we were able to get him taken care of because we had the ingenuity to be creative and think. And I said, we did Firewatch, right? Okay, maybe I can use that. So again, you were able to save the service member, but that transitioning service member should not have even been in the process of looking for a house or making offers. And one of the big box lenders let him down. And that's why it's so crucial. Like the VA helped out a lot. They used good judgment and flexibility in their underwriting guidelines, and they allowed us to be creative, to create them for them, but not everyone is built the same, cut from the same cloth, and going to be able to help out the way that we can,
Yeah, for sure. No, that's an awesome story. And that's just a testament that, it sucks because there's just so much, but you just got to make sure that obviously you're working with the right company, right individual that are fully vetting the pre-qualification. And that's why we're doing this. Education is the best thing that you can have. And, when you're working with your military clients as agents, right, having that conversation, learning a little bit and say, okay, where do we need to be going, and ensuring that we have success, mission success, right, with that.
Yeah.
So, all right, good stuff. Okay, so quick recap. Transitioning out of the military, it does pose some challenges. So really make sure that you're creating a plan before you get out of the military, right? Something that you can utilize before you get out of the military is the Skill Bridge program. That allows you to, effectively intern with a company, a civilian company, so you can get that experience. And as you transition, we can tie all that together to maybe get you pre-approved sooner than later, right? If you have a full-time offer letter, a full-time employment letter, that's something that we can use, really from day one, right? If you're starting literally the week after you exit the military, we can utilize that offer or employment letter to allow you to qualify for a VA loan, right? Now, if you're just going to get a job at, Quick Trip or Circle K or something like that, yeah, you're going to have to wait your 12 months, okay, to establish that consistency. But again, if you're in the engineering squadron or doing horizontal construction, once you get out of the civilian world, if you're doing the same type of job you were doing while you're in the military, that adds a huge benefit. And so that allows us to more than likely, not 100%, but more than likely use your income with transitioning out of the military. So it's a very complex thing. So just make sure that you're making a plan, right? You're talking with somebody sooner than later, and you're making a plan so that way we can guide you into doing the right things to set yourself up for success as you're exiting the military. So, all right, Justin, I appreciate you. Thank you. Have a good rest of your week. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, either hit Justin or I up, and love to help you out. Talk to you guys soon.
Yeah. See you on the next one.